he'll be chuffed to know that he outsmarted me.
He was on the ball yesterday. Coggers was on the ball. He was ready to go. He didn't have nearly the technological issues that you had. When you sent me an email saying I'm downloading Riverside, I was like, it's not a program. You can't download it.
I did download it. It told me to download it. Anyhow.
That's how great you are. That's how great you are technologically. You know, you downloaded something that can't be downloaded.
I don't want to flatter. I literally did download Riverside. I signed up.
That's
strange.
Amazing. That is amazing.
I don't want to flatter Coggers anymore. He'll be very chuffed that he's out tech me.
Well, talking about Coggers, those of you that are listening to this podcast, we did a podcast with Ian Coghill or Coggers and Emily Graham that sort of speaks to what Tarquin and I are going to talk about. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, go ahead and listen to that podcast. It's a really good one. We had a fantastic conversation, Tarquin. It was exceptional, and it really speaks to. It doesn't matter whether it's me in America talking about these hunting narrative issues, or you guys in the United Kingdom, or somebody in New Zealand. We're all facing the same critical issues.
I think we are. Yeah, I agree. I don't know how it is in New Zealand and the US, but I think here we bring it on ourselves to some degree.
What do you mean? You mean the bad apples?
I think the bad apples.
But surely there's more good apples than bad apples.
There's far more good apples, but as I'm sure you know, I'm in the travel business. Every time somebody has a bad trip, they tell 7 people. Every time somebody has a good trip, they only tell 1.
And
it's the same with all of this. Plus, as one of the guests we had on Moorland Matters, he said, you are a bunch of fairly simple, honest people who just tell the truth, but your adversaries are not telling the truth. They're not straightforward. They're very clever, and they're utilizing every trick they know, and we're just not savvy enough at dealing with that.
Or do you think we just don't want to go down to their level? And maybe that's something that should we be playing dirty? Should we be changing our tactics?
No, I think certainly over here, I think you've got people as you do in any country who simply disagree with killing things. So if you've got to put them to one side, because
that's a small minority. That's 10% of the population.
That's probably an argument you can't win. But I think what's happened here is we have your everyday family shoots and wildfowlers and pigeon shots and so on, who just go about their business according to the law, and everything's fine. But where it's got commercially driven, it's got a bit out of control. And I'm not saying that everybody's out of control, far from it, but it has allowed people to pick up on it. And I don't know how much. Have you shot in the UK? Come and shot pheasants?
No, I haven't at all. And in talking to Coggers and Emily, we've hatched a plan for me to come and attend one of your Why the Moorlands Matter, and sort of let me experience moorlands look, I'm a wetland ecologist. I'm a trained PhD wetland ecologist. I understand the peat systems, the bog systems, and I've never actually experienced it. So it'd be a cool viewpoint and lens.
I think what we did when commercial shooting, in inverted commas, began, and it began by people letting the odd day or selling the odd day to counter against costs, and now it's got to a point where there are shoots that are run completely commercial, and many of them are run very well. But what we've been good at is, selling the shooting, selling the clothing, selling the dogs, selling the cars, selling the guns, selling the cartridges. We can sell anybody anything, but what we haven't done is educated them on what the hell they're doing. And
the indirect benefits of what comes from that commercial shoot.
yes, and understanding what they're looking at. How many people can judge a well-run shoot that is putting things back into the countryside versus not? How many people nowadays, come out of the city to shoot, which we welcome. The more people who shoot, the stronger our sport is. But what we forgot is to actually teach them about what's going on. And we got a bit greedy, and that greed has manifested itself in three problems. Problem number one is we're probably putting too many pheasants and partridges in certain areas, which is not good for the ground because they eat too much stuff, they do damage, etc., etc. There is unquestionably still the killing of raptors, which is illegal in this country, and as one of the another of our attendees said, it's like snakes and ladders. You guys are climbing the ladder, and then somebody does something stupid, and you just slide down.
That is such an amazing analogy, snakes and ladders.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's such an amazing analogy.
And then thirdly, we are dragging our feet on lead, and a hell of a lot of good work is, we shoot a lot of pheasants and partridges in this country, and it's very healthy meat, it's very good for everybody, etc., etc., etc. But we're still shooting it with lead, which makes it unsaleable on a grand scale. And shooting all those birds is infinitely less defensible if they can't be put into the food chain successfully.
100%. No, 100%. We're shooting ourselves, proverbially shooting ourselves in the foot, right?
Yeah. You got
what's the argument for not going to a steel-based shot? Is it the same here in the States? Availability and cost?
Availability, cost, people owning old guns, people not understanding, if their gun can shoot steel or not. You've got the English gun syndrome, where a lot of English guns weren't designed to take steel, and therefore people probably have to put those guns down. There's a lot of value in some of them. I think it's stubbornness, ignorance. People feel that lead does a better job of killing the bird, which it probably does as a picker-up. Somebody who retrieves birds once they're shot.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably more wounding with steel than there is with lead, particularly the very high birds, which in this country, the most sporting bird is considered to be the most high bird. And that has been taken to extreme now, so that people are using, 4-shot to try and hit these pheasants, which are like 75 yards up in the air, incredibly high birds, and that is becoming a problem in itself. In that, should you really be shooting at stuff which you're far more likely to wound than you are to kill? And if you convert to steel at the moment, you're definitely more likely to wound it than kill it cleanly. So as a result, having listened to 165 people over 4 years at these Why Moorland Matters events, it is clear that the main issues with shooting is our inability to get away from lead, raptor persecution, and overstocking. And if we could resolve those, which we're perfectly capable of doing, I'm talking about game bird shooting rather than rifle shooting, would find itself in a much better place. And what we've been trying to do with Moorland Matters is to gauge everybody's opinion, because I don't think we've done a lot of listening. We've done a lot of defending, and I think that is why people in the shooting industry or the shooting community are very defensive and very angry because they're the sort of naysayers or the antis are making wild accusations, but at the bottom of it, there's truth in it, and the shooting community are not sophisticated enough or do not spend the money to be sophisticated enough to defend themselves, and they get angry and they get rude and they end up playing the same game as the people against them. And just to go back, I don't know if you talked about this yesterday, the reason why I wanted to start these events is I'm a photographer as well, and I was up on a moor, and I was in a field where I could film and photograph various moorland birds, which are beneficiaries of grouse moor management, curlews and lapwings and oyster catchers and birds like that, which I'm sure some of them exist with you. And across the dike or the valley, I could watch Rob, the keeper, doing what's called diversionary feeding of hen harrier with chicks. And what he's doing is he's feeding them instead of letting them take grouse chicks, for obvious reasons. And then behind me, in a car, is the militia dressed in camo for the RSPB, Royal Society for Protection of Birds, and they are watching Rob, waiting for Rob to make some mistake so they can run off to the police and tell the police that Rob's doing his job wrong, which leads to a whole lot of trouble. And so you've got three people who all love birds, all in different. I mean, that alone was madness. Then I went away. I came back 2 weeks later, and the farmer, it turns out he'd actually told his son was bored, so he said, go and muck around on a tractor. So the son harrowed the field where I'd been photographing all these birds, and all the chicks, eggs, everything got completely mullered. There wasn't a bird to be seen.
Oh, man.
Meanwhile, the RSPB, the Royal Society for Protection of Birds, is still watching Rob because they're not interested in what the farmer's doing, mullering all the birds. They're interested in Rob for political reasons, and Rob's still doing his thing. And I'm just thinking, this is madness. This is just total madness. We have to get people to start talking to each other. So that's why we started doing Why Moorlands Matter. And what we're learning, what we're actually doing is beginning to listen to people's opinions and talk to people in a sort of friendly way rather than angrily defending ourselves. And we're trying to let the fell do the talking. You take people up on these moors, and the birds are there for everybody to see. You can't put them there, you can't round them up, you can't rear them. These are wild creatures. They're either going to be there or they're not going to be there. And we've had ministers, we've had government departments, we've had all sorts of people, and I think they like the fact that we are engaging in dialogue. There's some humor. It's just very relaxed. But what you've got is 10 to 15 people by the time you've got people like Coggers and Emily and others as volunteers giving their, Emily talks about her community, and Coggers talks about other things, and Simon talks about what it was like to be a keeper, and then Kaz, who you probably know, she talks about what it's like to be a hill farmer. So these people actually hear how local people think and feel about it all, and then the conversation goes in whatever direction it goes in. Someone will pick up on something, and so every event is completely different to another. But what it's allowing, as we had a government minister who came and said, I like the way you're delivering your message. I like how relaxed these events are. I like the fact that we can all have fun, have a sense of humor, because we put them in cars to take them on safari. And I allocate cars and mixes of people to make sure that you don't end up in the same car or with the same people again. So they talk to each other. And I actually feel like putting 5 people in a car is better than 4 people in a car because they're all squashed together, they're touching, and they're a team, and they become a team looking for chicks and what have you. And no matter which walk of life they're from, it brings them together.
When in those scenarios, when they're in the moors, one of the things that you didn't discuss as you were talking about sort of things that are stymieing the elevation of wing shooting, bird shooting, moor grouse shooting, is the sort of indirect benefits that come to the community as a result of that. I'm assuming that when you do the Why Moorlands Matter, they get to see that?
They do. Sorry. They do get to see that, and they get to hear about it. I mean, Emily's about as genuine a local as you could ever get. And we took the minister to the local pub, and he
exactly like the pub guy getting monies because people are in the town, the hotelier, the petrol station attendant.
I mean, do come, but yes, they do see that, and they get that from Kaz, who's a hill farmer, and what it's like to be a hill farmer in those areas. They get it from Emily, and they get it from Simon, who was the keeper. So they're getting it all 3 directions. Plus, they're able to see it because it's a critical part. For every sort of rich guy on the fell shooting, there's 10 people who are benefiting. And this is a point we try and make to ministers: is you may not like the people who are doing the
exactly
trigger, but for everyone you want to punish, they will just go and spend their money somewhere else. They might go to Spain, they might go to South Africa, they might go wherever. They're just going to go and spend their money fishing, shooting somewhere else, on cars, boats, whatever. The money is what's going to walk. Yes, they'll be a bit upset it's all over, but they calm, they shoot, they go away. It's the sort of the loader, the chef, the server, the electrician, the car mechanic, the beater, the flanker, etc. They're all left distraught because they've lost a way of life, they've lost an income. They're all left. What do they do? That's the problem around the moors. So we feel that we're making progress by not being aggressive, by not being defensive, and by actually talking and listening to people and looking for compromises and ways forward. And I don't know whether the shooting community is comfortable with what we're doing, but we're doing a hell of a lot more good than bad. That's for sure. It's having conversations with people rather than just shouting matches with people.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's one of the things that we talked about with Emily and Coggins is that I totally agree with you that you can't influence the motivation of an individual to come and shoot on the moor or go to South Africa or Spain, right? They may just love it. They may just love, let's be honest for a second, they love killing things. Yeah. And I get the picture around that, but it's also, I think when you take a step back and the ministers take a step back and people that go and visit and see the place take a step back and go, jeepers creepers, look at the value, though, that individual is putting into the rural community. So I think we've got, obviously, you guys have set up this conservation communications website as a mechanism to communicate these kinds of things. But I think based on what I've just heard you say, has there been any thought to, because obviously you have great relationships with moors, you have great relationships with private landowners and their shoots. Has there been any discussions, brainstorming around, okay, we have these 3 rhetorics that are like our Achilles heels. Birds not going in the food chain, lead, I think you mentioned one other, I can't remember the other.
Overstocking,
that's right, overstocking.
And the persecution.
Is there opportunities to trial a different model?
I mean, these are conversations that are going on all the time. I think one of our weaknesses and I'll be interested to hear what your experiences are in other countries, because you've talked to a lot of people, is we don't have a governing body for shooting. We don't have an
What is
organization.
what does the shooting exercise fall under? What government regulation body does it fall under?
I mean, it falls under the Department of Environment, but
Okay.
that doesn't govern shooting. Yes, there are laws around shooting, that you can't shoot raptors and you can't do this and you can't do that. But if I'm being really blunt, as my friend Simon, who's one of my volunteers, a few years ago, the shooting organizations, whether they be conservation orientated or just representatives, or they all have different roles. It can be a keepers organization. They came up with something that called the Code of Good Shooting Practice.
Okay.
And then Simon sarcastically goes, I've got a really good idea. We'll come up with that. And then my idea is, let's ignore it.
Because really, there's no. But we're
that
laughing about it. We're laughing about it, but there's no real enforcement to this code. It's more of a goodwill, good gesture. Hey, this is what we believe in, but we actually don't have to follow it.
Yes, which is vastly ignored, and therefore we're just putting our foot in it even more. And look, I don't want to come across as anti. What I want to do is save shooting. I want to find compromises that allow stocking densities maybe to be adjusted. What I'm not trying to do is stop these shoots doing what they're doing so people lose their jobs. The people who do serve in the lodges and do go beating, I mean, they are a critical part of people's lives. So what I'm not looking to do is for them to lose out. I'm looking to solve these problems so they don't lose out. I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. And I think just writ large across the world, hunting operators and outfitters are in the same boat. There is really, when it comes to, dare I use the word ethics, it really isn't ethics. It really comes down to opinion on how conduct should be pushed out, whether in the public sphere or privately. Okay? And so the way to in my brain, the way to sort of not force the hand, and yet I say not force the hand, but I also say yes, force the hand. This was the thing that we have experienced our entire lives, which is called peer pressure.
Yeah.
And peer pressure is a wonderful thing when done in the right circumstances, which is, hey, farmer A has decided I'm going to do things differently. And because you're doing things differently, all of a sudden he's got the attention of conservation communications. He gets a tour of wild moorland matters on his property. He gets this big press. He gets the Minister of the Environment visiting him. He gets on a podcast on this global podcast network called Blood Origins all around the world. He gets all these things, and all of a sudden, Farmer B down the road is going, hey, what about me? I want attention too.
I mean, that is beginning to happen, particularly with the younger generation, the 30 somethings and the early 40 somethings. I think they feel it. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. The amount of wildlife in the UK is diminishing, and it's going to diminish further because of the government changes to farming in terms of subsidies to encourage conservation. And that gives us another reason to try and save driven pheasant shooting. I mean, I don't know if you understand the term hunger gap. I mean, here the hunger gap is sort of January to April. All the berries have been eaten, all the last seeds have been eaten, everything that's fallen to the ground has been eaten. The ground is bare, the vegetation is bare. So during those months, you've got a minimal amount of food, you've got a minimal amount of cover, and that's the riskiest time for our wildlife. And farm subsidies used to address that in the form of encourage them to create winter feedlots, for birds, for wild farmland birds, and create cover for them so that they're not easily targeted by raptors, etc.
And the idea behind that, people will look at that and go, well, that's an anthropomorphic influence or manipulation to ensure that you're keeping your birds to shoot. But the counter, from my perspective, I'd love to hear yours, is that we've had such an amazing, sometimes amazing, sometimes detrimental fingerprint on the landscape that if we rewound the clock 100 years, the habitat connectivity and all the things that were available for escapism, for security, nesting security, whatever you need security in those months, as well as food security, is not there any longer.
Correct. And we call it the three legs of the stool, which is predator control, food, and habitat. And that can be winter habitat, or it can be summer habitat that's producing insects or chicks. As you know, most of these chicks need insects for the first 2 to 4 weeks of life. And, a normal farm is going to clear out every possible insect it can. So shooting, it used to be farming, but the way they are reducing the subsidies to farmers to encourage them to do their conservation piece with, if you've got a field that's got a sort of odd end, what they do is they just straighten that edge and put that square, that little rectangular bit to winter bird food for yellowhammers and linnets and what have you, and get paid for it.
Yeah.
That is potentially going to dry up.
So
the only other people that are producing cover and food through the winter and the possibility of insect producing weeds and plants and so on in the summer is shooting. So it's almost becoming the last defense before there's just wildlife desolation.
I heard a statistic from Coggers and Emily, and it just, as you were talking about the subsidies drying up, why doesn't the, and I'm going to get the society wrong or the organization wrong, but I'm not going to get the number wrong, but I think it's the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, or the Royal Society of Birds, that have a $180 million budget, £180 million budget a year. Why don't they subsidize the habitat and conservation for these birds?
Well, they are on their land, but
no, not on their own land. Come on.
Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask them. But I mean, if you could also ask them. I think the number I have in mind, I know, is out of date, so it's more. But domestic cats in this country kill 37 million birds a year. Why are they refusing to ask their members to put bells on their cats, or
Yeah, I've heard in Australia there's a whole group that says trap, neuter, and release, TNR or something like that, right? And we did something about it, and somebody said, and I'll have to mind my P's and Q's on this podcast, but it was like, cats aren't killing birds with their reproductive parts.
Right. Yeah.
They're not killing mammals, they're not killing amphibians with their reproductive parts, they're killing them with their mouths.
Yeah. Exactly. So, there's lots of questions, and, maybe try and get somebody from that organization on the podcast. But
well, it speaks to the conservation industry, these big conservation industries that have huge budgets on an annual basis, that with those budgets could do immense conservation work. Immense.
Yes.
Right? And I get it, right? These big NGOs are we call them bingos. They're machines, right? And you have to feed the machine, and they've formed the machine, and the machine's been running like that for 75 years versus a lean, mean machine that's like, okay, we're getting 100 million in, 90 million's going on the ground.
Exactly.
For the thing that we are stood up to do, which is protect birds.
That's the problem. The 90 million is actually going on getting the next 100 million.
Correct. Yeah.
And I'm through this process, I'm becoming a little bit anti-membership organizations, because I think they all, whether they be shooting organizations or conservation organizations, they all hide behind poor decisions based on worrying about their membership. And the shooting organization is just the same. They should come out and say, for God's sake, people, drop lead. but they're worried about their members, and that's why we need a governing body for shooting. Who will just say, right, guys, this is how it's got to be. End of.
Or again, one example of one farmer who turned to lead and was able to put the food in the food chain, and you look at and you show the economics tied to it. Because here's what I learned from Emily and Coggers, and again, I think it's a piece of rhetoric that is probably not well known and makes complete sense when you start thinking about it. These private land moors, everybody, if you put a poll together of 100 people or 10 people, how many do you think would say, yes, these guys are making bukus of money?
Well, they all think of that. I mean, well, the most,
and they're not.
What? They're losing it, hand over fist.
Exactly.
where we ran one of our events, they did not pull the trigger once
in a year. In 3 years. Didn't Emily say something like on a
It cost £450,000 to run the moor for a year, and they didn't pull the trigger. And
so not a single cent came in through hunting that year, and they stayed on track, doing what they do.
Yeah. And where are you going to find anyone else willing to do that?
Nowhere.
And, I think as Colga said, this year, they may be on the fell for 20 days out of 365 days.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, and when we took the minister down, we met the guy who owns the hotel and the pub. And last year, he lost 300 bed nights because there was no shooting. But what he said, which was interesting, is I'm not dumb enough to rely on shooting to run my business.
Sure.
It's the gravy. And
that's right.
Great, and I support it. But I try and run my business without shooting, because otherwise I would just suffer terribly from the ups and downs of, last year, it's not like anybody did anything wrong. It just rained. Incessantly rained, and it killed every last chick. He can't allow his business to be vulnerable to too much rain.
Yeah.
He said, however, if the moor owners cease to manage the moors and keep them looking good and full of wildlife, then we are in trouble, because people come here to admire these valleys, to see black grouse, to see curlews, to do all of this stuff. And if that goes, then we really do have a problem.
Yeah, you're actually echoing what I heard a cattle farmer say in West Texas. So this cattle farmer in West Texas has Ardad, which is this Barbary sheep, on their property. And the cattle is the business. That's what, like the hotel owner, he's obviously got just regular tourists coming in and regular businessmen coming in. But the hunting allows them to make ends meet in lean years and puts a cherry on top in good years. That allows them to then survive really lean years or really bad years in the future. So it's almost like they're not relying on hunting. They just use it as an opportunity to keep themselves alive.
Yeah. And you extend from what he said in terms of another friend of mine who owns a moor has amazing black grouse leg, which if you come, we should try and get you to
That's
see.
what Emily said. Emily said, come in April on the black grouse lek. That'd be it.
It's an extraordinary experience, and he's very proud of it, and he's achieved amazing things. And he asked us to do a website. His dream was to do a website where people can book the lek online. They stay in the local pub, so he's chuffed with that. That helps the local pub, so he ticks that box. And maybe they donate 100 quid for their morning on the lek, and that can go to the Wildlife Conservation Trust, etc., etc. He had it all worked out in his mind, and that's admirable, and that's what he should be doing. But then you realize that whoever's booked online the first year could just go back the next year and book. And once people know where it is, they could vandalize it. For all we know, somebody could just go there with an air gun and just pop off the black grouse. And then he could become criticized for where, the sighting of his hides, and are they
Mm.
too close, or are they this? And what about insurance? And what about vandalism? And eventually, once you actually thought it all through, he sadly came to the conclusion that he shouldn't do it.
Mm.
And there's another example of I'm in the Cotswolds, and come sort of the beginning of the year, the short-eared owls come through, and there's a farmer about 20 miles from here who leaves his wildflower meadows fallow through the winter, and the barn owls and the short-eared owls come and hunt, and it really draws photographers. They're fantastic to photograph, which is great. But he got to a point where he had 105 photographers around one field. Now, this is in February, where it's muddy, it's raining a lot. 105 photographers, it's got to be 50, 60 cars
Yeah.
around one field.
Yeah.
Parking on the verges, driving all over the place, turning the place into mud, destroying the undergrowth, just making a hell of a mess. So his result is he just plows in the field because he just can't put up with it anymore. So that's the other end of the scale.
Mm.
And anyhow, what we're trying to do with conservation communication is actually talk to people, understand them, make adjustments. And we feel that with the commercialization of shooting, shooting used to be a country pursuit by country people, and it is a country pursuit, but it's carried out by a lot of people from the city who, I'm not anti people from the city, it's just how it is. But we are going to embark on a mission to try and re-engage them with wildlife via any and every social media channel, whether it be YouTube or anywhere else.
And that's what conservation communication is going to do. It's not just going to be blogs and website, but rather it's going to be the gamut of communication opportunities, right?
Yes. And we've got some very talented people, whether they be, filmmakers, podcasters, whatever, because we have to re-engage people. And the more people who are engaged with in this case, British wildlife, the more people are going to care about it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, they come out, shoot a few pheasants, drink some red wine, and go home again, and don't give them a moment's thought. I mean, they may as well shoot clay pigeons, to be honest. And yet we need them on side, and we need them loving wildlife, because if we don't, if people aren't valuing it, then nobody's going to do anything about it. And it gets more and more depleted every day.
And to you, the value is beyond someone coming to pay to shoot, right?
Yes, it's I shoot. I love my shooting. I love it. But this is about saving shooting because of the good it does to British wildlife. It's not about saving shooting because I love shooting. It's got more serious than that. And shooting does do a lot of good, but the amount of people who understand what it does and why it does it, who shoot, compared to 30 years ago, is there's a big, massive gap. And it also delivers, mental health benefits and all sorts of things, but they have to have a basic understanding of what is going on in the countryside. And if they don't, and the amazing thing with the Why Moorland Matters events is we've had plenty of shooting people. They're often reluctant to come because they don't want to be put in an uncomfortable position, because they imagine that they're going to come and have an argument with people. There's never been an argument. There's been, there's barely been strong words. It's just polite dialogue. We're sitting in a beautiful house with friendly people, and it's always very constructive. But they worry about what they're getting themselves into. But when they do come, very few people understand the uplands who even shoot. They may have been to a grouse moor and shot grouse in the autumn, but they still don't understand what makes it tick. They don't understand what has to happen in the spring in order for them to be able to go there and shoot in the autumn. And if I owned a moor, I would invite you on the condition you came in the spring, so you understood what you were doing and why you were doing it and how these grouse are there in the first place.
Yeah, a deeper understanding of the system, right? A deeper understanding of what it takes, a deeper understanding of the benefits to wildlife. And obviously science, stuff that's coming out of GWCT is helping with that. Emily and Coggers and I discussed that amazing paper that just came out of the pre-post experiment where pre-predator removal was occurring, and then they just decided, we're going to stop. And it went exactly what we all know, not we all know, but what we know is going to happen. And we needed the proof. Like, you need proof to say, okay, you don't want us to remove predators? Okay, we'll stop. But we're going to monitor and show the actual consequence of that action.
Yeah.
And it's all of those. It's that benefit. It's the consequences of actions.
And I mean, 2 of the 7 species just cease to exist in that area.
Yeah, locally extinct.
Like that. Yeah,
it's amazing.
And
it's amazing.
Predator species increased. One increased by 127%.
Yeah, I think it was foxes or crows or one of the predators that just went, completely haywire from a population perspective.
But I don't think having a slanging match with these people is the way forward. And people probably think I'm really weak and all the rest of it. But I am clear on what we have to address. And therefore, we have an area of responsibility to address those issues. There would be people who would argue, well, they'll then go for you on something else, etc., and they might. But at the moment, I feel that my community is weak on putting itself in a strong position.
Yeah, and that's why we exist. That's what Blood Origins exists for, right? What you're standing up from a conservation communication is what we've been trying to do for the last 5 years, which is here's our truth, here's our heart, here's data, here's information, here's science, and we present it in such a way that is, like you said earlier, not aggressive, not defensive, but rather here's what we know, understand it, ask questions, watch me interact with someone who's not in our favor, is not in our ilk, watch how I interact with them, see that I'm not getting defensive, see that I'm not getting aggressive, see that I'm not calling them every name under the sun.
Yeah.
And learn from it. And the next time somebody says something at a dinner conversation about elephants being endangered, you now are confident enough because you've got the data, you've got the information, you've seen how I've interacted, you've seen how I've said something for you to say something. Because you have the knowledge base.
All great until someone does something really stupid and then pulls the wool under the rug from under you, and that's where the whole raptor persecution comes in. Is you do exactly what you've described, and the next thing you know, somebody's killed a bird illegally, and it's in the papers, and you go down that ladder back to school, and that's a problem, a real problem.
Yeah,
and I don't know what the hunting equivalent of that is.
No, it's part. Look, it's the bad apples, right? And every community has bad apples. Unfortunately, our bad apples are tied into killing things, which make them even worse. But a lot of people for instance, if we use this Moor example, and I was to start communicating, which I hope we will, about all these things.
Yeah.
And somebody goes, well, what about this guy persecuting a raptor and killing a raptor? First of all, you'd be honest and address and say, well, that's not something we condone. But 2, and then it's typically what in our circles, they'll say, well, why aren't you focusing on that? Why aren't you calling them out for that? And I'll say, because there's 95 other good things that nobody's talking about that we feel like we're going to talk about. And there's one bad thing that you harp on. I get it. We don't condone it. but I'm going to just continue to talk about the good.
Yeah.
Because there's great stuff happening.
I mean, the crazy thing about here is somebody in Cornwall, which is in the very, very south of the UK, doing something stupid could impact someone in Scotland's job or the north of England, hundreds of miles away. It could trigger the worst thing, which it gets banned because of it. And therefore these actions are extremely irresponsible to the greater community. They threaten the whole community. You know, whether it be keepers, whether it be beaters, pickers up, you're threatening people, just tens of thousands of people's way of life. And that's a problem. It really is. And now that shooting is becoming...
And you think the solution there is this body, a shooting body? What do you think the solution there is?
Do I think a governing body for shooting is going to stop people doing stupid things like raptor persecution? No, I don't, because you've got the bad eggs. But do I think that they could set us on a different course in terms of lead versus steel? I think they could definitely do that. And do I think they could lead the dialogue on achieving different densities of pheasants and partridges on the ground that allow everyone to keep their job, but satisfies the what's the word I'm looking for? It's sort of ecological, ecological concerns. Yes, I do think they could play a role to play.
Well, where can people find more information about the conservation communication side of things, Tarquin?
Well, there's a conservation communication website which will be evolving as we develop. At the moment, it just talks about why moorlands matter and why lowlands matter. We did a why lowlands matter yesterday, where I had a sustainability director of a large food catering company and his staff come and look at the local shoot and the local farm and stuff. I mean, they feed 16 million people and in the UK, and they are interested in deer and putting they sell food in a lot of stadiums in the UK, which whether it be the fine dining of the private boxes or whether it be the burger joint, that they whip down at half time and buy themselves a burger. They do it all, and they are interested in evolving their food from not only from a venison point of view, but buying pheasants and partridges, but they can't have lead. To the point that there's quite a lot of these organizations that are interested. I think that if we weren't using lead, there would be no issue with the lack of market for pheasants and partridges in this country, because I think these kinds of companies would buy the whole lot.
Hand over fist.
Yeah. But what they want, which I think we show them admirably, they want the comfort that shooting is doing good things for the countryside. They want to feel comfortable with it. And they came to a Moorland Matters, and then they've come to a Lowland Matters. And
it's almost like you guys need like a biodiversity stamp or something like that. You know how people, it's like you get an organic stamp, you get But
I think, I hope that the next step is organizations like that are going to go, we want to associate ourselves with people who are producing wildlife. And when I say wildlife, I mean wildlife. I don't just reared pheasants and partridges, because it is becoming so bad in this country. I think there is a value to people who are managing the land where wildlife is. And I think people are going to start to want to be associated with that. It's a good thing. And that's one of the things we want to show with conservation communication, is we want to go, there's a lot of amazing conservation projects going on in this country, which nobody knows about. I talked to a guy a month or two ago. He said, our barn owl project, which happens on our local shoot because we leave this field and that field and they can feed there and they're thriving. He said, our barn owl project is so successful, the young have to go to another county to find a territory because we've got so many barn owls here. That's a completely untold story.
Amazing.
So that's what we're going to try and do.
Awesome.
Is expose all of this.
Well, we're excited. As I told Emily and Coggers, please count us in however we can help you.
Great.
We've got great.
If you'd like to come next year, we'll invite you for sure.
And as I said to them, my main cinematography team that I use for all of our big work lives in Cardiff.
Right.
So
too far for them.
It'll be perfect. And I'm excited. And please, if there's anything we can do in terms of we've already spoken about some great data on this podcast. The fact that a very simple infographic, 2024, whatever it is, this private landowner put £440,000 into the property, and you have a bar graph that says inputs and outputs, and the output is 0. That's an amazing piece of information that is stunning. That you just need to...
will have repeated itself across the majority of grouse moors in this country last year. Very few people shot anything.
Well, let us know how we can help. We'd be happy to help you, Tarquin, and in any way we can do it.
Well, I look forward to meeting you next April, maybe.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, mate.
Take care. Bye.